Hi, Bill Vales here, and I'm here to tell you about an exciting new show that we've been working on at LCTV. The name of the show is Your Backyard. And on Your Backyard, we're going to take you through all the conservation trails that are in Littleton. And our guide for this is going to be the Guide to Conservation Land of Littleton, Mass. And this book was put out by the Littleton Conservation Trust, written by Art Lazarus, a longtime Littleton resident and geologist. We're very excited about this show, and we'd like you to sit back, relax, and let's see where your backyard takes you today. Okay, here we are, Hartwell Family Preserve, right off of Hartwell Ave in Littleton. And I'm going to get some stuff out of here. Have my trusty pack with some water. I have my binoculars, which I'm hopeful of seeing a lot of birds today. So I'm going to bring my binoculars with me. I always have almost a library with me, but I have various field guides that I use depending on what I'm going to look at. I have birds and hawks. Hawks is a great thing to look for right now because we're just finishing up peak hawk migration in New England. If you spend some time looking to the sky, you can see hawks riding on what's known as kettles, which will take them up in the air with very little effort, and then they glide down more towards their destination. Then they go back up. Okay, a lot of hawks this time of year. I'm only going to bring with me this because I'm lazy today. Okay, so here we go. Oh, wait a minute. I forgot my water. We always want to have a little water with us and maybe a snack. Let me get that out of the trunk. Okay, let me get my water in here. Here we go, water. Always good to have. You can't trust the water, so you need to make sure that you have safe water, and it makes for a great refreshing stop. So here we go. Okay, we're at the entrance to the Hartwell Family Memorial Preserve. This is another part of Littleton's conservation trails, and this is open to the public to hike, enjoy, look at the sights. This is about 102 acres. There's a couple hiking trails through here. There's a loop trail that we're going to take, and also a trail off to one area that's going to take us down around Beaver Brook through an old stone bridge. This general area down by Beaver Brook is going to be considered a riparian area, and that means that it's by a river or stream. And we're going to see some vegetation and wildlife, hopefully, around there that will be indicative of that area. The general lay of the land here is, this is referred to as Proctor Hill. And this is a glacial drumlin that's aligned in a somewhat north-south pattern. And we're going to talk more about that because there's some other glacial features that we're going to run into here. A couple items of note. I've never hiked this trail before. However, I've been on Proctor Hill for the last 30 years because I live around here, and I can say with absolute surety that there's a ton of wildlife around here. There's black bear, there's bobcat, there's turkeys, coyotes, a lot of birds. A bird just caught my eye over here to the left. I'm a bird nut, so I've seen over here, as I've lived around this area, probably 130 to 150 species of birds right on this area here. So it really has a great diversity of species, both in terms of the flora, the fauna, and the bird life. So let's go. I can't wait. Well, here we are at the start of the trailhead here. And the first thing that I'd like to point out to you, the trail is fairly wide, looks like an easy walk so far, maybe about 10 feet wide. You notice on the ground there's a lot of pine needles. And if we look over here on this large white pine tree, we'll see the designation for Loop Trail. Now, as we've noticed on other places that we've visited, Prouty Hill and Oak Hill, the Littleton conservation lands, a lot of our sites are really well labeled in terms of their trails, and this appears to be another example. So on this large white pine, we see the designation Loop Trail, and an interesting item right under the sign Loop Trail is what appears to be two eyes looking at you with a nose and a tongue sticking out at you. This little face here, you should take note of that on the Loop Trail. And what I'm seeing here for trees at this point is I'm seeing a lot of white pines around. I see some red oaks, which are generally, you find with pines, big leaves. So let's continue on. Okay, as we walk along here, you'll notice that we're a bit higher, about 20-25 feet higher than the land on our left and the land on the right. We're walking on a fairly narrow ridge, and this ridge is a glacial esker. And the esker was left here by the melting glacier that was last here between 12 and 15,000 years ago. As the ice melted, it created a lot of channels of water and rivers that carried with it debris that was picked up by the glacier. As the river slowed down, it dropped the material that was being gathered, carried in the streams, producing these structures called eskers. So that's what we're on here. And there's a lot of eskers around North America and Northern Europe. And in North America, we'll see these glacial deposits down to about Nantucket, Martha's Vineyard, over to Long Island. Kind of runs a line up through southern Wisconsin, up around there, because that was the extent of the Pleistocene glacier around 15,000 years ago. So I'm sitting here on top of this esker, and it really gives me a lovely view because I'm elevated a little bit and I can look down into the woods around me, and it's really quite pleasant. I can hear a lot of birds chattering. We're somewhat in the area of peak fall migration, so I hear a lot of robins chattering in the background. I hear a few, I believe are blackburnian warblers, which I won't challenge Mark to try to put on film, but I do hear them. As I'm looking around, I see a lot of different trees, and I have this great little instant field guide, if you will, that my wife Carol picked up, I think for the price of 50 cents at a yard sale. And it allows me to quickly identify various leaves, trees, based on their bark and their leaf. And it's a real quick reference, and it comes in real handy. And I bring with me in my backpack various references depending on what I want to look at on any given day. Some days I don't want to look at anything, okay? I just want to enjoy the wind on my face. Other days I'm into rocks. I'll bring my geology guide. Sometimes I'm into trees. I'll bring some guides for trees. I'm always into birds, okay? So I always bring a bird guide. But you'll notice here, one of the leaves that I found as we went by is of the American elm. Matches right up to the American elm tree. And we talked about the American elm tree on a Littleton 302nd spot that we did, about how they used to be a dominant tree in Littleton, but also in most communities throughout New England. And then they vanished, the result of the Dutch elm disease, which was unfortunately brought over here. Now, it didn't leave the elm trees extinct, okay, but it did contain them. It killed off millions of them. And now, as our elm trees grow, they all succumb to the blight, the Dutch elm disease, I should say. So, you know, we've had a lot of great old trees around here that have been afflicted by various things. And as we walk through, if we find some more elm trees, we're going to point them out to you. So why don't we continue on? I've rested long enough, and we'll see what else we find. Okay, so I see a damaged bluebird box here. We do have bluebirds in the area. In particular, we have the eastern bluebird here. The eastern bluebird has made a pretty good comeback in this area. They like to nest in hollows about 4 feet off the ground. That's an optimum size way to configure a bluebird house. They like the opening about an inch in diameter, about 4 feet off the ground. Now, bluebirds were around before bluebird houses were built, clearly, okay? So they may do just fine in the hollows of trees and brush. However, to help the population along, they do like to be in a box like this, and they also like to be facing an open field, because a bluebird will tend to eat bugs. One of their favorite meals is a mealworm. They love mealworms, okay? And they will bring their bugs back, place them on top of the bluebird house, and they'll eat them off of here. So sometimes when you see bluebird houses with the fancy metal tops on them, stay away from that, okay? That's going to be hot on the bluebird's feet, for one thing, and things are going to slide off. So the beauty of having something out of wood, very simple out of wood, they can grab it as they're trying to get into the hole. And, you know, keep it simple. Simple is better. And we're going to look in here, and the top is off of this, so that could have been from a raccoon. You should always do this kind of gingerly. You never know when a snake's going to come out or something like that. So we're going to take a look in this. Oh, what do we have here? Okay, so look what we have here. So we have the old top, okay, the old top, which fell in. Now, this nest is not a bluebird's nest. If this was a bluebird's nest, it would have a lot of pine needles. The bluebirds tend to line a preferred way for them to build their nest is to line their nest with pine needles around. This remnant almost looks like, to me, a tufted titmouse, which is another common species of bird that we have around here. Bluebirds are an absolute delight. I see them around town. I grew up in this area. I never saw a bluebird. They made their comeback after the greater we, got a handle on pollutants such as DDT. DDT was really deadly to bluebirds and other birds. So this needs a new bluebird house. I'll make a note of that, perhaps for spring. But let's continue on. Okay, as you can see here, there's some fairly open areas as well as woodsy areas, and these open areas make great browse for deer and other animals. One thing that really strikes me, and I don't know if it's my age where I've slowed down a little bit and appreciate things a little more, but these young white pine trees look absolutely beautiful to me. They look like they have a color leaning towards blue in some areas. Absolutely beautiful. So, you know, taking notes of things like that when you're out really makes for a pleasant day. Okay. Okay, we've just passed the loop trail. We're taking a little side trail. And what I notice here is a little bit rustling of the ground that's occurred. I'm suspicious that that is probably turkeys, okay? I know there's a lot of turkeys here because I've had them in my yard. I've had as many as 21 turkeys in my yard. And this is what they do. They scratch around looking for bugs, acorns, and this has got to be a great place for them to find acorns because look at all the red oaks that we have around here. The place is covered with red oaks among gray birch and white pine. So seeing turkeys here is not a stretch at all. So let's continue on. Well, we've opened up into the Beaver Brook area. So this is the riparian environment because we're right next to a river and brook, Beaver Brook. I hear all sorts of sounds, so I'm somewhat distracted. Okay, I hear a little cackling of ducks over here. I hear some wood ducks over here, which have a very distinct sound. I hear a lot of grackles, which I know are starting to flock, and it's just going to be, I guess, in a couple weeks. We're not going to see them anymore until probably around March. So I find this, I've got to focus on what I'm doing here, okay? So here we are in Beaver Brook, and Beaver Brook will become more obvious to us as we continue further down. But this is a riparian environment. We see out here we have some cattails. These tufts of grass, also known as hummocks, okay, grow in this sort of environment. I'm looking out there in the distance and I see a wood duck box, okay, and that means there's wood ducks nesting out here. Now, again, birds don't require that they have man-made objects to nest in. We do like to help them along because we love nature. But let's take a look in this particular tree here. This tree has been worked pretty heavily by what look like woodpeckers. They could be sapsuckers, but I suspect they're woodpeckers around here. And what I see here is a cavity. And this cavity that's dug out here, that'd be a great place for a bluebird to nest. Now, it won't be there forever, but for this spring, that could be a place that a bluebird will put dibs on to nest there. Look at the height, you know, a little more than 4 feet, but not bad. And that'll make a great home. You can see here all the holes here. So there's a lot of activity going on by by woodpeckers. Odds are that those are hairy woodpeckers or downy woodpeckers. But that cavity, I'll bet you next year there's a bluebird in it, and I'm going to check it out. Okay, well, I'm walking down the trail coming in from the other side, and what I'm walking towards here is an old stone slab bridge. And the stone slabs are of significant proportion. I see one slab down there that's probably 12 feet long and 2 feet wide and another 1.5 feet thick. And this stone slab bridge was used as a part of a stagecoach road that led to Ayr. Now, if you remember, when we were at Oak Hill, we looked at a stagecoach trail over at Oak Hill that led to Ayr. I suspect this is part of that same trail going through Beaver Brook and over to Oak Hill. And this is a beautiful, pleasant area. Looking out at Beaver Brook, absolutely beautiful. Oh, there's a great blue heron right there. There it goes. Get my videographer on here immediately. And it's going to light on that. Up, 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 up. Well, if you look at this tree here, this is right at the corner of the stone bridge. This tree looks a little sickly, and that's because it is. This is an elm tree that's been afflicted by the Dutch elm disease. And this is pretty much what happens to elm trees in this area, and for that matter, throughout all of North America. They'll get about this big. This is probably 25, maybe 30 feet high, about 9 inches across. They get pretty sickly, and that's Dutch elm disease. You know, we don't cut them down because, you know, these will provide habitats for bugs and birds to live in, and eventually, you know, they'll fall down under their own power. These elms used to be massive, absolutely massive, you know, like this, you know, and even bigger. And if you look at old pictures of Littleton, you'll see through Littleton Center, it's lined with beautiful, majestic elm trees, but those are no more. This is what they succumb to. Something else I need to point out too is trash. And trash is a problem all through our lives. You know, people don't properly dispose of trash, and you can see what a blight that puts on the landscape. I look around in a few other areas, I see a few bottles and pieces of paper, but I'll ask people to be very mindful of their trash and how they leave the environment. You know, we should do nothing but leave footprints and take pictures. Okay, we shouldn't mar the environment. We shouldn't be throwing things like this on the ground. Okay? So I'll bring this back and dispose of it properly. Okay, well, we're just leaving the stone bridge, and we come upon this beautiful field. I didn't know this was here. I've never walked these trails before. This is absolutely gorgeous. I think we're roughly in the area of Delaney Drive, which comes off of Russell Street. And what an absolutely beautiful field, lined with the trees that are changing with the fall season. An absolute hidden gem. Hidden gem. Didn't know this was here, and pleasantly surprised. Okay, we just came up from the stone bridge and we were heading out towards Delaney Drive. One thing of note is that we've been walking on an area known as Scratch Flat. Okay, now Scratch Flat is that area in Littleton that our local author John Mitchell described through his folkloric history of ceremonial time. But this area here, the Beaver Brook area, this is Scratch Flat. We are on Scratch Flat, and it extends for about a square mile, plus or minus. So there's different things that we can look for when we're out in an environment like this. We can think about how man used the land. We can think about how man describes the land. We can observe how animals are using the land, birds and animals. So there's really a lot to look about. And of course, you don't have to think about anything either. You can just walk out here and enjoy the day, okay? Okay, as we've walked down this trail, it clears out a little more to our right here, and this is off of Delaney Drive. I'm seeing some houses that allow me to recognize that. Something I'd like to point out here is stone walls. We have stone walls throughout our woods, not just in Littleton, but throughout all of New England. Stone walls are a significant archaeological artifact that we have in New England. They allow us to understand a little bit about land usage, where boundaries may have been, how fields and areas may have been used. So a lot of times, because you see a stone wall in the woods, someone did not take the time to lug those stone walls into the woods. What happened was they were clearing a field, and they put the stones off the field so they could plow the field, and then woods grew up around them. So a lot of these trees here aren't overly old, maybe 70, 80 years. This red oak here, probably 70 years old. So it's easy to see that this stone wall would have been built before that, you know, and that field over there probably plowed, had to get the rocks out of it. Those rocks, complements of the Pleistocene glacier, okay? Okay, we've taken just a little glimmer of the Hartwell Family Preserve. Absolutely beautiful place. You saw some unique different features from flora, fauna. We saw some land use features such as the stone bridge. There's a lot of other hiking to do here, and we would like you to finish this off for us. You enjoy this.